and a very warm welcome to another edition of World Panorama. Here we are getting you your weekly dose of major international news with a perspective. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. Manmohan Singh and Angela Merkel ink 6 pacts to boost bilateral cooperation between India and Germany, but India-EU yet to resolve FTA glitches. North Korea keeps Seoul, Washington on the edge, issues new threats amid missile launch speculation. Obama calls for end to North's belligerent approach. It's another breather for former Pak President Pervez Musharraf. Islamabad High Court extends his bail again, even as objections remain over his candidacy for polls. And Margaret Thatcher, former British Prime Minister known as the Iron Lady, dies at 87. World Panorama gets you a special look at her life. Straight to the story in focus this week. Indo-German relations took a major step forward with the two countries signing 6 major agreements pertaining to higher education, civil security research, agriculture, infrastructure and green energy at the end of the second intergovernmental consultative meeting held in the presence of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Now, what was unique about this bilateral meeting, as Foreign Secretary Ranjan Mathai later remarked, that rarely has an Indian Prime Minister sat in a bilateral meet accompanied by as many as 5 cabinet ministers. Now, this meet marks an increasing strengthening of economic and political ties between the two nations, with India voicing interest in furthering economic relations, expanding defense cooperation, anchored in technology transfer, co-development and co-production in India, easing of German export controls for India as well, and continuing efforts through the G4 for reforming the UNSC, while in addition to agreements signed, agreeing on the importance of an early conclusion of a balanced India-EU broad-based trade and investment agreement and on setting up a high-technology partnership group. Now, at the same time, the two sides were candid to admit that there was still some way to go before EU would agree to signing a free trade agreement, or the FTA, with India. Now, what is the underlying significance of the meet? What would it do to bolster India's ties with the European Union and its benefits in terms of expanding trade with its European partner? To discuss this and more, this week on the show is Sandeep, Dikshit, senior journalist. Thank you, Sandeep, for joining me. I'll be back with you in just a moment. Before that, a look at this detailed report. And Germany endorsed 6 pacts to expand bilateral cooperation between them during Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit to Berlin for the second intergovernmental consultations. Singh invited German companies to invest in the country and provide impetus to the economic growth as the government aimed to develop its infrastructure sector.
We are aiming to attract an investment of nearly $1 trillion in infrastructure over the next 5 years. I hope German companies and companies from across Europe will make good use of these opportunities and help accelerate our growth process to our mutual advantage.
India and Germany said they had made significant headway in talks for a free trade and investment agreement with the European Union, while at the same time underlining the main issues that were impeding the task.
We Europeans have a clear idea what we want our free trade agreements to look like. India is a large country and already has free trade agreements with Japan, South Korea and ASEAN, and we cannot expect everybody to agree with all our wishes. If there is flexibility on both sides, and I feel that there is a great willingness on the Indian side, then I can only say that in our experience, as soon as we had a free trade agreement, then the trade grew significantly, and therefore we should do whatever it takes.
In denen wir heute weiterkommen könnten, als wir das viele Jahre getan haben.
One of India's largest trading partner in EU, Germany, has a considerable say in the ongoing talks for an India-EU free trade agreement that is expected to remove import duties on about 90% of tariff lines. However, negotiations on the deal have been on since 2007 but missed several deadlines. Germany is India's major trading partner in Europe, and bilateral trade with the country having registered an 18.4% increase to touch 18.37 billion euros by 2011. Germany is also the 8th largest foreign direct investor in India. All right, Sandeep, now the statement, the Indo-German statement, was called Shaping the Future Together. Now, how far do you think these two nations have succeeded during this particular bilateral meet?
Yeah, it does, because a lot is left in the future from India's interest. What Europe and Germany are aiming for are quick results now. That is why they're saying lower duties on automobiles, lower duty on wine and spirits. But India doesn't get anything. India doesn't get high technology. India's people cannot go there and work. So this is what future is all about. For instance, these agreements. One is about B.Ed education in German, which means in Germany, where the population is declining, they want teachers. So maybe Indian teachers in future can go there. Similarly, there's a MOU in vocational training. And as you know, vocational training is among the best in Germany. So if our people can get this vocational training, and then the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor comes up, and another agreement with Germany on 1 billion in soft loans for green corridor, that I think is more or less the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. So you've got a set of trained people, very well trained Indians, who can then set up this industrial corridor and really take India's manufacturing into the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Back home, we see a lot of, various political parties saying that what's in it for India? Everything India has to give, its technology or know-how to Germany and not getting anything in return. Because Germany has so much to give. Then why should India be giving all of it and not taking anything back? So that's their main point of opposition. How do you think, this trade pact is going to shape up?
Yeah, exactly. And the government is listening to what these people are saying. These people are saying, and protests, let me tell you, are not taking place only in India. They're taking place as far up as Malaysia and other developing countries, where they're against this pharmaceutical, the way European Union wants to sign the pharmaceutical agreement with India. They're against it because prices of a lot of life-saving drugs that come out from India are going to increase, and worldwide the poor people are going to suffer a lot. So then there's this dairy issue. They want India to allow dairy products from there to come in. And again, they protest because, as you know, India has a very thriving cooperative dairy system, and that could face a lot of threat, and that could even affect social stability. So in that sense, it is the European Union which is trying to hustle India into an agreement. But I suppose that India, as you know, has decent economic growth. OECD says it's going to taper off, but it still remains 4.5%. But Europe, except for a few broad spots like Germany and Scandinavian countries, they're in decline. So it is they who need it first. And it is they who should be more desperate by making concessions. And according to my information, this has been conveyed to the Europeans during the meeting with Angela Merkel by the Prime Minister. That it is they who have to be now flexible.
Yes, but on the other hand, you have the Indian Commerce Minister Anand Sharma, who will be very soon going to Brussels and taking 15th. A call on the trade pact. That's right. And he seems to be very upbeat and very positive about doing something concrete and coming back with it. What do you think is going to happen? All eyes will be on that.
Well, doing concrete would be ensuring that we don't get a bad deal in pharmaceuticals, ensuring that our people can go there in the services sector and can stay there on long-term visas, for instance, and of course that our automobile sector, that there's a midway solution, because we already have a thriving automobile manufacturing and assembling sector. Related to it is the automotive sector, which has become a world power now. So we've got to protect that, as well as meet European aspirations to sell the high-end cars into India at lower duty. And I suppose none of us would be complaining if high-end cars come into India, which are not going to be manufactured here in this first place. And the emerging elite of India does need that. So there's no harm in allowing them that. But yes, beyond a certain point, it would be very, very difficult, as it has been for the past 6 years, and 19 EU-India meetings, to really get hustled and bullied into signing something which is against the people and national interests.
All right. And also, the European Union has been making a lot of demands, and those demands seem to be very detrimental to India's long-term interests. So what is it that India can do now after the second very important meeting? It's been termed as something, as a step forward in the right direction. The ties are getting stronger and better. What are the things that India should be keeping in mind in moving forward as far as expanding its ties are concerned?
Expanding its ties, it must always keep a very keen eye on developing its manufacturing sector. India's manufacturing sector is very weak. And no country in the world becomes a world power unless its manufacturing sector is strong. So, and this extends across segments. Take defense, for instance. The big countries, US, Russia, China, France, UK, Germany, they are largely self-sufficient in defense.
Yes.
In India, we meet only 30%, even that, most of it is low end of defense needs. Rest is all imported. So again, you got to, the manufacturing has go up, and it has to be dual use to be economical. For instance, shipbuilding. There should be civilian ships as well as ships with application for the Navy. Only then are you going to be economical. That's the model that the US takes. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, GE, all of them very benign names when you look at civilian use, but militaristically, missiles, fighters, whatnot.
Okay, so focus on the manufacturing sector and focus on India's growth. That should be the main focus when this Brussels meet comes up. Let's wait and watch what Mr. Anand Sharma does as far as signing of these pacts and solidifying these talks which are in progress is concerned. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for joining me on World Panorama this week. Hope to have you very soon next time.
Thanks.
We're taking a very short break. After that, a report on the latest from Korea as it renews threats to Seoul and Washington. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back. You're watching World Panorama. Now, South Korea raised its surveillance of North Korea after reports that the reclusive state moved one or more long-range missiles in readiness for a possible launch amid the bluster of recent weeks, during which the North has threatened to launch a nuclear attack on the US. The regime appears to have made good on its threat to withdraw its workers from the Kaesong industrial complex.
Raised its military watch alert to vital threat during the week ahead of an expected North Korean missile launch, as UN Chief Ban Ki-moon warned the Korean peninsula may be slipping out of control.
I'm deeply concerned and troubled, as you just said, as one of the Korean citizens particularly, that the current level of tension is very dangerous. If any small incident caused by miscalculation or misjudgment, it may create an uncontrollable situation.
As the world waits to see if North Korea launches a ballistic missile, the regime has attempted to raise tensions further, warning foreigners living in South Korea to make evacuation plans because the peninsula is on the brink of war.
North Korea's statement advising foreigners to make plans to evacuate Seoul is more unhelpful rhetoric that serves only to escalate tensions. This kind of rhetoric will only further isolate North Korea from the international community, and we continue to urge the North Korean leadership to heed President Obama's call to choose the path of peace and to come into compliance with its international obligations.
So today's news that we should evacuate like foreigners, I was not scared, but now that everyone is getting like chance, I'm kind of really scared now.
It feels like today's announcement is another step forward towards this constantly shifting line of when will something really happen. Up until now, it has been a lot of gestures and a lot of words. So this feels like just one more step closer to that line.
Meanwhile, South Korean lawmakers urged North Korea to resume operations at the Kaesong Joint Industrial Park, where it withdrew laborers for a second day.
It's not too late. The North Korean government should stop all provocative behavior and change its course towards peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The North Korean authorities should first unconditionally return its workers back to their workplace and remove the restrictions on transit in order to normalize the Kaesong industrial zone.
Pyongyang has frequently tested short-range Scud missiles, but the longer-range Musudan and Nodong missiles are an unknown quantity. Analysts say the current tensions will probably last until the end of April, when joint US-South Korean military drills end. The North has termed the drills hostile preparation for invasion by Seoul and Washington, who say the drills are regular annual exercises.
And in an interim relief to Pervez Musharraf, the Pakistan Supreme Court rejected a plea to arrest the former president in a treason case and adjourned the next hearing. A two-judge bench led by Justice Jawad S. Khwaja had summoned Musharraf, in fact, after hearing preliminary arguments on 5 petitions seeking his trial for treason for subverting the constitution and declaring an emergency back in 2007.
Pakistan's top court on Tuesday granted former dictator Pervez Musharraf a breathing space in his battle against treason and allegations dating back to his time in power. Musharraf did not appear in the court in person and was represented by his advocate Ahmed Raza Kasuri. The judge adjourned the treason hearing to April 15th to give Musharraf's lawyers time to prepare a response, rejecting their plea to put the matter off until the next election to allow him time to campaign.
All of them had demanded that General Musharraf should be detained until the decision of the court, that he should be arrested, but the court rejected that.
Kasuri said he had sought 6 weeks' time from the court to submit his response, in which Musharraf would reply to every point raised against him, adding that certain hidden names would be revealed in the response.
3 नवंबर का जो पीसीओ है, जिसको के यहाँ चैलेंज किया गया है और कहा गया कि वो एक गैर कानूनी इक़्तिदाम था.
The PCO of November 3, 2007 has been challenged here, and it is being called an unconstitutional step. But it is written in that same PCO that before the order was issued, all governors, the entire cabinet, all the 3 services chief, naval, air force and army were consulted, and so were all corps commanders.
Pakistan's election board has last week rejected Pervez Musharraf's nomination papers for the constituency of NA 48 Islamabad. However, his nomination papers for contesting the polls in NA 32 in the northwest constituency of Chitral were accepted. The former army chief returned last month after nearly 4 years of self-imposed exile to contest a May 11 general election, despite the possibility of arrest on various charges and death threats from Pakistani Taliban, had hoped to compete in the election from 4 constituencies in various provinces.
Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady who transformed Britain and inspired conservatives around the world by radically rolling back the state during her 11 years in power, died on Monday following a stroke. She was 87. Britain's only woman Prime Minister, the unyielding, outspoken Thatcher, led the Conservatives to 3 election victories, governing from 1979 to 1990, the longest continuous period in office by a British Premier since the early 19th century. World Panorama brings you a report.
Harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
Britain's first woman Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher died peacefully on Monday morning at the Ritz Hotel after a stroke. She had been in poor health for months and had declined into dementia in her final years. Prime Minister David Cameron cut short a visit to Europe to return to Britain after the death was announced, and British flags on government buildings and royal palaces across London were lowered to half-mast.
Well, today is a truly sad day for our country. We've lost a great Prime Minister, a great leader, a great Britain. As our first woman Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher succeeded against all the odds. And the real thing about Margaret Thatcher is that she didn't just lead our country, she saved our country. And I believe she'll go down as the greatest British peacetime Prime Minister. Today is obviously a day we should most of all think of her family. We've lost someone great in public life, but they've lost a much-loved mother and grandmother, and we should think of them today.
I think she's been an inspiration to many, many women and to many people who go into politics. And I think when you look at Margaret Thatcher and you compare her with some of the men in grey suits who preceded her and who succeeded her, I think there's no doubt that her memory will live on, and I think this whole country is very much in her debt.
It is important to me that this prize has been won in open electoral contest with 4 other potential leaders. I know that they'll be disappointed, but I hope we shall soon be back working together as colleagues for the things in which we believe.
Loved or loathed in death as in life, Margaret Thatcher left no one indifferent, finding some of her most ardent admirers among her political opponents.
There's very few political leaders that get a chance and have the character and the ability to change not just the political landscape of their country, but the political landscape of the world. And she was such a figure. She was a towering global figure who made a vast impact. And you know, her reputation is rightly immensely high.
She was Prime Minister already a long time ago, before even I was able to meet her more officially, but I was very much inspired by her leadership. Among so many male parliamentarians, she was just one woman. That was astonishing to me.
Britain's only woman Prime Minister, the tough, outspoken Thatcher, led the Conservatives to 3 election victories, governing from 1979 to 1990, the longest continuous period in office by a British Prime Minister since the early 19th century. With the then US President Ronald Reagan, she formed a strong alliance against communism and was rewarded by seeing the Berlin Wall torn down in 1989, though she worried a unified Germany would dominate Europe. Her radical right-wing views broke the mold of British politics, changing the status quo so profoundly that even subsequent Labour governments accepted many of her policies. The British government said Thatcher would have a ceremonial funeral with military honours at London's St Paul's Cathedral, which falls short of a full state funeral in accordance with the wishes of her family.
Time now to take a look at some of the other international news and a quick wrap. Here's Globe Watch. Chinese President Xi Jinping inspected the Navy's South Sea Fleet in Sanya in the latest display of his consolidation of power over the army and China's military strength. Xi urged soldiers to be better prepared for military struggle in the inspection on Tuesday, which was only reported by the state and military media 3 days later. Acting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his rival Enrique Capriles closed their electoral campaigns on Thursday with massive rallies in the cities of Caracas and Barquisimeto. Most opinion polls gave Maduro a strong lead in the April 14th elections, mainly because of Hugo Chávez's endorsement and the surge of grief and sympathy over his death from cancer last month. The candidates closed out official campaigning with dueling rallies, drawing hundreds of thousands of boisterous supporters. British Foreign Secretary William Hague admitted the world had failed to resolve Syria's 2-year-old conflict in which an estimated 70,000 people have been killed. With diplomatic efforts deadlocked, and Hague described it as the world's biggest destination for jihadists. The Iranian government announced they have completed the earthquake rescue and commenced reconstruction on Thursday. A 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck Bushehr province in southern Iran on Tuesday, killing 37 people and injuring more than 1,000. The Iranian military has helped with the rescue operations after the earthquake. Shifting gears, let's now get you all the sports updates that you've missed from through the week. Have a look at sports action.
Scotland's Martin Laird outdueled Rory McIlroy with a spectacular final round 63 to win the Texas Open by 2 shots over the world number 2. Laird started the day 5 shots behind leader Billy Horschel, but he vaulted into the mix with 5 birdies on his front 9. He added 4 more on the back to complete the bogey-free round 9 under and end the tournament at 14 under 274. The victory brought Laird his first win on the PGA Tour in over 2 years and more importantly earned him an invitation to this week's Masters. Spain's double world champion Jorge Lorenzo drew first blood by taking the MotoGP floodlit season opener from pole in Qatar as Italian great Valentino Rossi stormed to second. Lorenzo finished in 42 minutes 39.8 seconds with teammate Rossi back on a Yamaha after 2 years with Ducati 5.9 seconds behind. Senior Indian cricketer Sachin Tendulkar will make his television debut in an animation series called Master Blasters, in which he will be seen mentoring young talents from across the world. The 3D computer-generated imagery of action, comedy and adventure animation series would be co-produced by Shamaru Entertainment and Moonscoop, and the first season will comprise 26 episodes of 22 minutes each.
That's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. I'll be back next week, same time, with more world news. Till then, you can join us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. This week, we wrap up on a musical note as President Barack Obama hosts Mavis Staples, Eddie Floyd and Justin Timberlake at the White House for a performance honoring Memphis music. Goodbye and thanks for watching.
It's good for you. And I got you for you. No, ain't nobody worried. No, ain't no smiling faces. No lions to races.